Hey there, and welcome to YAS, a stripper podcast. On this podcast, we'll discuss how classifying each other as people and workers is dangerous to society and marginalized groups of people. We'll also talk about the climate in and outside of the strip clubs and all of the amazing things that strippers do. And of course, we'll talk about all of the things in between. I'm your queen, A.M. Davies, and this is YAS, a stripper podcast. Well, guess who it is again? It's AMD. Have you missed me yet? Have you missed me? It's only been 7 days. I know you missed me. I just love telling you about how I feel and what I'm dealing with. And something that's like always kind of come up for me and comes up a little bit later in this podcast episode is like religion and stuff. I was just texting with my brother the other day, and my brother and I talk about some pretty radical things when we have the opportunity to chat. And something that's come up for him recently, and it's definitely been coming up for me for a while now, is this like lack of separation of church and state. And it's bothers me that the word God is on the dollar. It bothers me that we have to pledge allegiance to God at school, and when we were going to school as children. And I'm just seeing more and more. It's almost like it's getting intertwined more and more as time goes on. And as someone who's not a religious person, it's just getting more and more infuriating as time goes on, and I'm really unsure of what to do about it, and like if there is anything that can be done about it. And I find religion to be, specifically like Catholicism, evangelical sects, and things like that. I find it to be really damaging and really hurtful to many, many communities and to humanity as a whole. I read the news a lot and I see a lot about what's happening in the world. And I always kind of come to this conclusion that, really serious organized religion is kind of at the root of a lot of issues, including racism. And so that's something that we're going to get into more towards the end of this podcast. And so, I just kind of want to also put that out there in case you are super religious and you're listening to this, or, I just don't, I like to give trigger warnings. And so I don't know if religion is a trigger for some of you. So, but I'm really excited for you to listen to Posh. She has a lot of amazing insight, wisdom, research that she's done. And she's also, a pretty well-known name in the kink community, in the kink sex work community. And so, she kind of lives this, she grew up religious, and then she turned into like a kink sex worker. And, it's a really different thing, right? It's like a totally end of the spectrum type of thing. And so it's always really fascinating to me to see sex workers who grew up in a religious household turn into sex workers. I say that to say, like, I would love to know if somebody has done a study on this because I seem to come across that a lot here on this podcast. So if you all know of any studies in this arena, please let me know, because I'm really curious. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Madam Posh. Hi, everyone. I'm AMD. So excited to be inside your earballs again. Today's guest is going to be Madam Posh. Before we get to Madam Posh, though, the usual. Hello, we're taking donations now because we would like to eventually pay our guests. We would like to retroactively, that's the big word, retroactively pay past guests and be able to pay future guests. Why? Because they deserve it. If you love this podcast and you would like to donate, please go to paypal.me/yes, a stripper podcast. And if you don't feel like going to PayPal, you can go to yesastripperpodcast.com and click on the donate button. Thank you so much in advance. And thank you to those who have been donating. Really appreciate your tips. So without further ado, let's get over into Posh. What's up? How are you? Well,
I
sippy.
am great. Sorry. I thought I
No.
was going to get that in there, that sip of that drink in there before I cut it too close. I am great. And I am super excited to be having this conversation with you.
Thank you. Me as well. Before we get into the meat of what is you, can you let everyone know what your pronouns are?
Yes, I do. I have recently publicly started identifying as non-binary, but I do still go by her, he pronouns. Um, if you call me a gentleman or handsome, I'm gonna think that I pulled out my mask look very good. My masculine look very good that day. So either or is fine with me, and that's either or is what you may get on a day. You may get
Yeah.
Beyonce or you may get Jay-Z.
Yeah, I've actually noticed because I was stalking you on Instagram, which is one of my favorite hobbies, stalking sex workers.
Yes.
And because every time that I've had the pleasure of speaking with you on Zoom, you're typically like, this is your presentation, like no makeup, hat on, sweatshirt. And then when I was on your Instagram, I was like, oh, hello, you bright red lips and beautiful, like, full hair. And I was like, oh, wow, there's like, and each are like, you're equally beautiful no matter what you do. But it was just very interesting to see sort of the difference in you.
Yeah, I think when I was growing up, I was a tomboy until I was about 13 or 14. Like I wore guys jeans and basketball jerseys because I
Nice.
played basketball. And I always all my best friends were always very girly. But I just even during recess, most of the time I played like sports with the guys.
Hmm.
And then to be honest, and I'm sure we'll get more into this, I'm a dark-skinned Black woman who was definitely sexualized at a very young age, and I was adopted, so I was raised by white parents, and we'll get more into that too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But very religious, conservative white parents, and my mom very much pushed on me a very specific, pure, performative femininity because it was always performative for me.
Sure.
Um, and as we're going to get in today, as talk about kind of kink and some of the things that I do now that I've been able to allow me to kind of reclaim my own identity and have to be less performative. I think I actually did a post about this on my social media yesterday about how I've had to perform femininity in my entire life, adult life, most of the time, often to put a roof over my head, whether
Hmm.
it was in the strip club or in a serious business office setting. And so to be in a space where I don't have to, where I can take ownership and don't have to perform that for people, cis men, to listen to me, is very empowering.
Yeah.
So and again, I've always loved the art of fashion. I love playing with different looks. I love that my mom blessed me with DNA so that different wigs give me completely different looks. It's really fun to play with. And my hair's been, it's really short right now, my natural hair, but it was a little bit longer a few months back, and I still, wear my hat all the time and stuff. And then I have a couple wigs that are froze, and I put one of my froze on one day for a live stream, and it was really touching and also kind of endearing. All the white people are like, "Oh my God, you did your hair? I didn't know." And I was like, bless your heart. I like, at least you understand what shrinkage is, but that was not my hair. like,
Right.
like if I had a fro as big as my wig, I would not have time to do all the things that I do. And like at the end of the day, I can definitely say all these things about, oh yes, I'm discovering my identity, but I cannot discount the fact that it's just time sometimes. Like we've been in quarantine, and like if I don't have to put a full face of makeup on to do my job, I don't want to have to, because I've
Oh,
had to for
absolutely.
13 years. Like I mean, you've been a
I feel
stripper.
you on that.
When
Yeah.
people are like, how do you do your lashes so easily? Well, I had to do them 7 days a week for six
Yeah.
years. So part of it is like time. Like, do I want to spend 45 minutes doing my makeup when I could maybe get other things done? And it doesn't really matter whether my makeup's done or not. Also, you know what, another thing, a couple of my boyfriends in the past, I remember like having like barely no makeup on. I go in, I do the whole work, and I come out, and they're like, it doesn't, okay. Oh, I see you put something on your eyes. And I'm like, wait. Okay. So if y'all don't give a fuck, like if you all don't
Right.
notice this,
Right.
like if I go to the gas station looking like a bum and I still get hit on, why am I making all this effort
Why?
all the time?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And that happens all the time too. I literally would get hit on at the gas station like in nasty ass shit and I'd be like, "What?" I'd be like genuinely shocked. Like, "What the fuck do
I
you
picked this
want here?"
outfit
Yeah.
to repel people. And like, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that speaks to just like, it's not actually about sexual attraction in those moments. It's more about like exerting power,
Yeah, and capitalism.
Yeah,
Like it's a lot of just the companies telling us you need to have your
right. That too.
contour and you've got to
Okay.
have this and your celebrity person uses this thing.
In
But
order
let's be
to be
honest.
attractive. In order
Yeah.
to be attractive. Yeah.
Yeah, but who
Hmm.
who really notices when your face is beat? Other women and gay men, like, and
Right.
drag queens, right? And so, like, let's just be honest, we're not doing it for the cis men. We're not doing it if you're straight. You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for that compliment. You're doing it for the drag queen to go, girl, yes, your face is beat, and that will make you fall out more than any man running after you any day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, you're making some really excellent points right now. Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Just from
Uh,
my experience.
so yeah, I want to get into like some of the stuff that you do for sex work because it's
Yeah.
it's all stuff that's like really out of my lane and I'm very interested and it's, very curious, but I just don't know enough. And so I was hoping you could educate me and others who are in the same situation as me. And
Yeah.
so yeah, so one of the things that you do is rope bondage. You're into rope bondage pretty
I am.
heavily.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I'm heavy.
So
I'm hooked.
yeah, so like how does one get into rope bondage and at what point are you like, "Oh, this is the thing for me?" Because it's very specific, it's very
Mhm.
intentional. So what was that for you?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess I'll just explain. So am a dominatrix and I do kinky BDSM things. Just to start there. I got into interestingly enough, as a sex worker and a stripper for 6 years. Um, and then on and off in between when needed. But I was around people who practiced this kind of lifestyle or did kinky things, went to dungeons all the time, and just never, like, my best friend married her dom, and like, I knew they got married, I knew they were husband and wife, and it wasn't until I kind of found out about kink, and then I was curious, and then I was like, I think my friend has mentioned that she had got flogged before, right? And so I was like, I'm gonna call her. I was like, do you know anything about this? And she's like, yeah, I married my dom. And I was like, what? You've been in this the whole time?
Yeah.
And like, part of it was, what did I miss out on because you didn't tell me about it? And the other part was like, what about our friendship made you feel like you couldn't tell me? Like,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
so funny story. I actually remember I was hanging out with a couple I was good friends with when I stripped with the girl, and we would go back to their house and drink, party after work and stuff like that. And one night I remember we were talking about sex stuff, and she's like, oh yeah, she's like, I have a butt plug that is a unicorn tail.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, really? I was like, cool. And she's like, yeah. And then her boyfriend was like, you should go put it on for her. And she's like, no. And he's like, you should put it on for her. And I was like, yeah, sure, put it on for me. Or like, I didn't like, and so she came back down on all fours with the butt plug in, and it was beautiful. It was like long rainbow, like, unicorn.
Yes.
And I was like, well, that's adorable. And I just went on with my life. Like, I didn't even think, I was like, I knew they did crazy, like, she had a butt plug that was a little piggy thing too, like pigtail. So I never thought anything of it. Again, until about 5-6 years ago, I was newly single, dating, and I had a couple gentlemen reach out to me on a dating app wanting to do this type of lifestyle. And I was, after the third guy, I was like, well, I keep attracting people that want to do this, so maybe I should at least know something about it.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, I spent like a year researching. Like, I went to work and then I came home and researched before I went to any kind of event or anything like that. And then I went to an event. I think the first event I went to was in Houston. It was what they call spankos. Those are people who are specifically into spanking. And kind of the second I went into it, I was like, oh, these are my people. Where have you been all my life? Because it was, what's the best way to explain it? It was kind of like, oh gosh, why am I going to forget his name right now? One of my favorite artists from the 60s. His muse was Edie Sedgwick, and I'm hating myself that I'm forgetting
Andy
his name.
Warhol.
Andy Warhol, thank you. So Andy Warhol had what was called the Factory,
Yes.
which was basically, it was a warehouse building in which all of his artist friends just came and like made art. They like painted, or they danced, or they filmed videos, and it was a safe space for trans people and queer people and people of color, and minus some of the racism and the hard drugs. It was definitely something I'm like, oh, that just sounds like the place to be, right? With all the weirdos and the artists and the rejects, and like that's home. And that's how I felt when I kind of went to my first kink event. So then I was head in. It was my friend, actually. I was starting to get into starting my pro dom business, and he needed someone to come with him to a rope bondage class to like bottom. And so me and my friend came with him, and I figured I'd go because I'm like, oh, I'm doing this for work. Yeah, as a pro dom, I should know a few things about rope. I'll probably have a client that might want something. And then I went, and the teacher was amazing and very charismatic. And I think took like the second session before I was like, oh my God, I love this.
Yeah.
And I do remember particularly he was showing us a harness, and he was teaching with one of his partners. And so he kind of got excited. He's like, oh, you know what we actually sometimes do? He's like, this isn't part of the class. And I was like, and he's like, and don't tell anybody I taught you this, because it was neck rope, which is something that like within the rope bondage community, it's like, we all do neck rope, but we don't really talk about neck rope, and like people don't really want to teach about neck rope, but we're all gonna do it. So he said that. He goes, I'm going to show you guys this thing. It's not in the curriculum, but I know you guys are going to do neck rope, so you might as well know how to do it safely, right?
Right.
And then he showed us some stuff that they do with it, and I was just like, oh my God, that is so hot. And it really comes down to the trust. It's not even watching the person get choked or the rope. It's the fact I can't, like, my panties get so wet when someone trusts me enough to put rope around their neck and know I'm not going to choke them or kill them. To be able to tie them up in rope and suspend them where they have no, use of their arms, and their safety is 100% in my, like, you as another human trust me enough to do that to you. Yeah, no, that's that is
interesting.
That is a lot. So there's a lot of aesthetics within rope that I really do love. I love making shapes with the body. I love waist rope. I love torture rope, contortions, floor rope, I love the engineering of it. But at the end of the day, the thing that, is getting me is really creating the space, and is the trust with the person, is the connection with the person, is, being halfway through that scene and seeing them happily suffer through something, right? Because most of them are going to be masochists. I am definitely a sadist. and like enjoying that on that level, but then also getting that deeper level of like, holy fuck, this person trusts me to do this to them and they're enjoying it with a smile, and I created this experience, like this is amazing. So it was, and I, as I learned more rope, and as I learned more from different teachers, more of the idiosyncrasies and the little extra things you can add in. Um, yeah, what drew me to rope is a lot of the little things. It's the, having someone in a position in a suspension and being able to like adjust an up line, which is like a line that's holding a part up. Being able to adjust it 2 inches and getting them to be like, like getting
Interesting.
a response, right? With such, little stuff. I also really love, within kink in general, I really love the fact that like, I absolutely can do like, I'm used to be a stripper. Like I can get you off if I can touch your parts. like,
Right.
and to be honest, like you don't need to be a stripper or sex worker to be able to do that. That's easy.
Right.
Like I laugh sometimes when I hear men brag about like, oh man, I made her have 14 orgasms. I tied her up. And I was like, oh, how'd you do that? And they're like, oh, I put a Hitachi. And like I tied a Hitachi to her thigh. And I was like, so I'm sorry, what did you do?
Oh,
Like
so
what did,
like a vibrator?
yeah, they get like a Hitachi, which is very common, and I'm not like shaming it, do it,
Right, but like you
but
didn't, like,
you
yeah.
didn't do that. Like,
Right.
so if you can make someone come and rope 14 times when you're not even touching them, now I'm impressed. Now I'm
Right.
interested.
And
Tell
that
me
is
your
something,
skills.
that's something that happens?
It can, yeah, depending on what you're
Wow.
doing. Now I do rope on all different scales. Like I do rope with people fully clothed, no sexuality at all. This is a artistic performance, or to be honest, like a therapeutic experience, an energy session. Like if you were going to go get your cards read, or massage, or um, stone work, acupuncture. Like I kind of put it in that realm of stuff, because we can definitely process some stuff that you're emotionally going through a rope scene. If you are, um talk about positioning a lot, right? Like if you're someone, if you're having something where you're trying to process being more open, right? Well, maybe I then tie you up in a sequence which that starts with you very closed off in the fetal position, and then slowly as we're working through and as you're processing the different feelings of everything, you end up in a very open, almost butterfly position, right? And that can be very therapeutic to have um a solely focused moment, right? There's no distractions. There can't be any distractions because you're in the rope. You have to process what you're in right there to let you sit in whatever's going on, and then to physically represent that in the positioning that you're doing can be very therapeutic, right? If you think about like certain meditation and stuff, when you are opening up there, your hands are going out or something, and your hands are separating and you're opening your body up. We're doing similar types of things within rope. Sometimes if I have someone come to me and they're feeling really lonely or disconnected, from their body and themselves, well then maybe I'm going to do something that is actually more hugging, right? Like maybe I'm going to do an arms front harness where you're
That's so
actually in
interesting.
a bear hug, and as we move through positioning, you end up in the fetal position, right? So you end up in your own little like bear hug of rope, and that in itself can be therapeutic to kind of work through whatever ever emotionally you're going through. And it doesn't always have to be that intense. Sometimes you're like, I have people come to me and they're just like, I want to be fucking sore tomorrow, just fuck me up.
Wow.
And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and like we're not dealing with any emotion. It's just like, and I'm like, yeah, all right, let's do
Yeah.
it. Like put you here, put your leg here. And just to also clarify with people, I call what I do rope bondage suspension. It is also known in Japan as shibari. It's also known as kimbaku. The reason I say that so people don't think that I'm talking about something different, it is similar, but the reason why I use rope bondage is because kimbaku and shibari are Japanese arts, and I am not Japanese, nor do I live in Japan. And some of the advocacy activism work I do is kind of getting this message out here.
Sure.
The use of shibari in the rope community is oftentimes used to gatekeep or to be pretentious.
Right.
And it can be especially infuriating when people are using it that way, and they're white men,
Right.
that it's like, wait, but you're you're not Japanese. So why are you telling me how to correctly pronounce Japanese words? Like,
Yeah, well, because they love to mansplain. That's why. It's their favorite thing to
their
do. Yeah.
favorites. I actually, oh, you
Uh,
know what? I have to tell this story. It's one of my
yeah.
favorite stories that pertains to that. I went to an intensive, which within the rope community is going to be like 2 days with a rope teacher, rope master typically. And you'll have, it'll be small. So you'll have 5 to 8 couples, and you just kind of go in to the details and everything, and you get a lot of one-on-one attention. So I got to go to an intensive with a female Japanese rigger by the name of Saki Kimoju. And I was super excited. She had to have a translator. Like had to teach the class in Japanese. So it's probably one of the most authentic classes that I've gotten to go to. And there was one point in the class where she was, oh, sorry, let me also set this up. I am the only person of color other than the woman, her translator, and her partner in this group of like
right.
25 people. I'm also the only female rigger. Wow. And so she's teaching a box tie, which is a rope harness where your arms are behind your back. It's probably one of the most common ones you'll see when you look stuff up. And she showed a part of the tie where she did something. She put the rope like behind some other rope when a lot of people put it in front of that part of the rope, right?
Okay.
And it, oh yeah, put it behind here, just kind of moves on. And there was about 3 or 4 male riggers that literally they couldn't help themselves from like kind of saying something like, wait, did she just go in front of the stem, right? Like while she's still teaching, and they're just kind of fell out their seats, to be honest. I'm like, like, and I'm like, okay, like I think like that's how she's teaching this pattern. I'm going to listen to the Japanese woman who is teaching us about the Japanese art, right? Yes. So after she got done teaching it, 3 grown white men bum rush her, right? Bum rush her up the front. And we're like, so can you tell me, because the last time you were here, you said you should always go behind the stem, and you went in front of the stem, and da 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 da. And she basically was like, it doesn't matter. You can do either way. Like that was kind of her response. But I always was just like, I have never in my life ever felt so entitled that at a class like this, where I'm learning something directly from the source,
from an expert,
that I would physically bum rush her. Even like 3 men. So like at no point did 2 of the men go, oh, someone else is bum rushing her, maybe I'll slow down. Like, no, right. All 3 of you, this tiny woman. And then still to this day, I play it back in my head, and I just can't. I'm like, this is a perfect example when we talk about entitlement, what the fuck we're talking about. Exactly. Because like how I have another friend in the community that's half Japanese. She was born in Japan, spoke fluent Japanese, moved here at a young age, was teased and ridiculed because she was, English was her second language. And then she gets into rope bondage as an adult, and she's like, it's profound when you have been teased about speaking your native language your whole life, and then all of a sudden a white man's like, you're not speaking your native language correctly.
Oh my God, that happened to her?
Yeah, that's not actually how you pronounce that.
You've got to be kidding me. Yeah.
Or people also bum rushing her or questioning her during a class. And she understands, like, she's mixed, so like she's can be white passing at times.
Right.
And so but even that, again, even when they thought she was a white woman, you know what I'm saying? Like, but then when you find, like, again, if I find out someone's one, I'm not going to correct someone like that anyways, but like when I know that they're part Japanese and not like, again, not like born in, not Japanese American, like she was born in Japan.
Right.
She spoke the language.
Right.
Yeah, just is, I don't know, it's an entitlement that I don't think
Well,
I'll ever experience in my life.
of course, yeah, because you're amazing and thoughtful and wonderful, and you've been raised completely differently, and like, and they're, yeah, it's just it's mind-boggling, and it actually points to something that I wanted to ask you, which was about and now I feel silly asking this question, but
Don't feel
it
silly.
is rope bondage, is that particular industry within sex work like plagued with discrimination like
Yeah.
other sex work. And I find it really interesting that you said in this class it was majoritively white men that are tying up other
Mm-hmm.
people, and like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, in the rope community, it is a majority of white men that are the riggers.
Dang.
And there's multiple reasons for that. One,
Okay.
I will admit that there is a little bit of a boundary for people of color sometimes within kink, financially, sometimes just finding kink spaces that there's more than two people of color. Finding safe spaces within kink. I think, again, these are common in many different spaces within our country. But then also just money. To
Got
be
it.
rope is inexpensive, and you can do so many kinky things with rope. Rope itself is cheap. The money you're going to spend is in the education if you want to get into suspension or performance or teaching or more advanced tying.
Right.
And the reason why a majority of white men were teaching is because statistically, white men can afford to take 2 months off of work and pay $10,000 to learn from a Japanese sensei, which would be a rope master.
Wow.
Because that's where the art is. That's where the masters are.
Right. So this derives from Japanese culture.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't understand that.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, don't apologize. No, I'm ignorant here. So no, I just didn't understand in general. But I kind of, I guess, in my ignorant brain thought, oh, it's their version of, like, it's what they call it, but I didn't really understand that until it's really hitting me right now. Like,
Yeah.
this derives from that culture, and
Yes.
they are the masters of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not only does it derive from that culture, but they also experienced some of the oppression and backlash that they're sex workers in Japan. Right. They're not like, they come here and they're, rock stars because we're like, oh my God, this talent you have, it's amazing. And it is, but like, they're sex workers, and a lot of them are, underground. The people that, originally were doing photography and magazines and stuff in Japan, like, I've been arrested multiple times. But there is also some differences in Japanese culture as far as American culture. Japanese culture is a little bit more of what you'd call a shame-based culture, and American
Right.
culture is a little bit more of a guilt-based culture. So,
Oh my God,
just,
it's so true.
yeah. So like in Japan, you might be at family dinner, and your mother may also go learn rope from the same master that you maybe learn rope from.
Wow.
But you're just never going to talk about it. Right.
Okay.
So like, you can do it underground, and but you just never talk about it. Right.
Yeah.
In America, there's still some guilt, around going to do these things. That's why, a lot of times people don't know there's a whole community of people that do these things, because it is very kind of underground. And it had to be, and sometimes it still has to be, because in some of the places in the country, this shit is still illegal. And
what exactly is illegal? Like rope stuff?
BDSM things.
Really? Okay.
There's not like, there's some places that, if you if you live in an apartment and you're loud and they call the police, like it's a roll of the dice whether that cop's going to understand what you're doing and what you're doing is consensual.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that didn't even cross my mind that if a cop
Mhm.
walks in on your session, they're like, "Ew, what the fuck is going on in here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're like, "What? This is normal." And they're
Yeah.
like, "No." Yeah, I get that. Because like even for if I walked in because I'm exposed to these things on a
Mhm.
regular basis, even though I'm ignorant about it, I still see it. And like I wouldn't think anything of it if unless they were like yelling out like help me, I'd be like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. But I can totally see cops rolling up on that.
Yeah,
Be
my
weird.
friend actually went to go do, and we do this, but it is, I do want to emphasize, it is a um privilege if you are able to do rope in public places, but it's
Right.
always amazing because you can get amazing pictures. And I had a
Yeah.
friend that was doing a rope scene. He's a person of color, and his bottom was white, and they were doing a rope scene like in a park to take some pictures,
Hmm.
and they did have the cops roll up.
I'm sure.
Um,
Sure.
and
I'm sure.
yeah, and it could, they got lucky that I think one of the cops was curious and one of them knew what was going on.
Right. Okay.
And the girl was very clearly like, oh, this is consensual. We're doing a photo shoot. Um, you can also get away sometimes with, just being actually really blatant about it. Like go to a very public area, do rope, be clothed, and just be like, we're doing an art project for college. Like
That's a
if you're,
fun college.
yeah, if you're clothed and you're not doing stuff that's focused in eroticism, you can get away with doing more stuff in public, but it's still a huge risk for people of color at any time,
Sure.
right?
Sure. Yes.
Um,
Yes.
as well as, I can understand, especially Black people having an issue with just rope being suspended from rope.
Sure.
There's
Sure.
a history there.
Yes.
But I've also found that a lot of Black people have found it very empowering, actually, to kind of reclaim some of that trauma in a more positive way,
Interesting. Yeah.
because kink and rope is consensual, right?
Hmm.
We do have dominant submissive relationship dynamics, right? People do have what are called master slave dynamics within kink. The difference is consent.
Right. Right.
For
Absolutely.
for people who think BDSM and kink is abuse, the difference is consent. If I beat
Right.
my partner and he doesn't consent, that is abuse. When
Right.
I beat my partner, it's not abuse because he's consented and he's giggling, like, Um,
Yeah.
but as soon as he wants to revoke that consent, he can at any time. That is,
Right.
if you want to get deep down into the psychology, like at the end of the day, the submissive does have the power because at the end of the day, they can red out of a situation.
They can
So
what?
can,
They can what?
sorry,
Red?
safe word.
But you said a
Yeah.
word. Red?
Red is a very common safe word for people in kink.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
say you're getting into a scene or, we use safe words we're in a 24/7 dynamic. So he's in
Hmm.
his submissive role 24/7, and we live together. So if he needs to maybe have a conversation about our dominant submissive dynamic that is safe and is not, that we're not in those roles, we're just two, humans, then he can like red. He can be like, oh, you know what? I need to red out of this. Can we have a conversation about this situation or have a conversation about something? Or if we're in a scene, like, we're doing a flogging scene, right? And we typically use a kind of like a what they call like stoplight system, green, yellow, red. So say he yellows, he's like yellow, that would let me know like, ooh, what you're doing is going a little too hard, but I'm not done, but you're just doing like, let's back it up a little bit.
Hmm.
If they
Hmm.
red, that means, oop, I'm done. Like,
Hmm.
nope, that's it,
Hmm.
scene's
Hmm.
over. You can red because, you've hit your limit, or you can red because, maybe something is starting to happen that wasn't consented to. Tops can also red out of a scene. Like you can get to a point where you're like, Well, I mean, that's part of your role as the dominant or the top, is to watch the bottom. Bottoms can also get lost in a scene, that adrenaline rush, and they start taking more than maybe what they consented to, or maybe what you think is safe. And so
Right.
as a top, you can also read and be like, ooh, I'm gonna go ahead and read and back us out of this scene, because you're as the bottom, they're getting into a headspace that is maybe deeper than you want to go. When you're doing this type of play, it is like natural drugs. That's the best way to explain it. You are going to get high from it.
Right, of course. Yeah.
You're going to get adrenaline rushes. You're going to get dopamine rushes, whether you are the one doing the things or the one experiencing the things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting high just from listening to all this. I'm like, wow, like I keep having moments. I'm like, whoo, because it's like so incredibly fascinating, and like I also am really intrigued and curious and just fascinated by the level of communication, like the mature
Yes.
communication that goes back and forth, and like always being aware that that consent line can change at any moment, and being like agreeing, like whenever that consent line changes, like I'm with you and I hear you, and that sounds like it's really important in these types of settings.
It's vital for
Mm-hmm.
for reasons I just mentioned, that there's
Right.
some places where some of this stuff is still illegal, and that is the definition between abuse and fun,
Right.
is consent. And so yeah,
Right.
a huge part of the kink community is consent practices and communication. And something I mention a lot on my YouTube channel and on my social media is that, like, I may be talking about spanking or whipping or mummification or whatever other fetish, CBT, rope bondage, whatever I'm talking about. But even if you don't do any of those things, my content at the end of the day is teaching you how to have better interpersonal relationships. That's what it is at the end of the
Mm,
day.
yeah.
We suck at communicating with each other. We do, as humans.
No
We
kidding.
suck.
Yeah.
And we are getting worse at it with technology. Not to sound like a boomer or anything, but like, it's true. Um, it's difficult sometimes to get people to like have a Zoom conversation because they just want to text. And I'm like, but I can't read your tone over text. I can't see your face or read your nonverbals over text. And when it comes to communication, 70% of it is nonverbal. It's not what as the words that are coming out of your mouth. And we very much in our society struggle with communication. I have resolved many arguments, many disagreements between people since I've been in kink, because I'm looking at them and I'm like, you guys are saying the same thing. It's just you think this word means this, and
Mm-hmm.
you are using a different word, even though you guys think that you're saying the same thing, right?
Right. Right.
And so in kink we really talk about like defining terminology. So like, say we're going to do a spanking scene, right? Or we'll call it an impact play scene. And I go, you want to do some impact play? And you're like, yeah. And impact play to you means spankings on the butt with my hand, but
Okay.
impact play to me means flogging from head to toe,
Ooh.
right?
Yeah, very
But
different, but same.
yes,
Right.
yes, but
Okay.
we both negotiated and said impact play, and you said impact play and I said impact play, and we said great, but we didn't define what that meant. So now we get in the scene and you're expecting hands in your butt, and I just came in with a huge ass fucking rubber flogger, and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Why are you hitting my back? You're supposed to be
Right.
spanking my butt. Well, we didn't define what impact play meant to you and what it meant to me.
Right.
So when we negotiate before scenes, when we're which is what we call the conversation to kind of get that informed consent. I always remind people, define terminology, define what someone means by I want a sensual something. Sensual to
Right.
some people means sexual. Sensual to other people means
Mm.
light touch, doesn't necessarily mean sexual, right? And I think that these concepts play out in everyday vanilla life. If you think about the next time you kind of have a conflict with someone, or maybe they're not understanding what you're saying, ask them to define some of the key terminology and see
Interesting.
if you don't understand what they're saying a little bit more.
Wow. Yes. That's so interesting, and it's so
Mhm.
fucking simple. you know, and it's like we don't even take the, yeah, oh my God, this is why I love sex workers so much.
Well, it's just,
Yes.
I think part of sex work forces you, well, one, it forces you to have to understand consent.
Yeah.
Right? But well, I mean, and we have lots of opportunities to practice consent, like to
Mm-hmm.
practice that interaction with people,
Mm-hmm.
in sexually, driven spaces. Um, but yeah, you can't ethically practice kink without personally growing yourself and also improving your communication skills.
Yeah.
When dominants come to me and are like, okay, I want to be a dom, what's the first thing I need to learn? And I was like, you need to go spend a couple months improving your communication. And
Yes.
they'll be like, what? And I'm like, I don't need to even talk to you to already tell you that it sucks.
Right.
Because everything in our normal, in the kink world, we call anything that's not kink vanilla. Everything in vanilla world is not promoting healthy communication or even ethical consent practices.
100%.
So
100%.
yeah,
Yes.
so you have to go learn those skills.
Yes.
I also think people connect a lot of kink and rope bondage and stuff to sex, which we are also taught in vanilla spaces, just as an inherent thing that we naturally know how to do. It's not. You also need to learn how to do it and learn your own body.
Yeah.
And not just women, men. Here's a quick tip for any men listening to this. Most of you haven't actually had real orgasms. Oh, hold on. Let
What?
that sit. Let that sit for a second. I know you think you've had real orgasms. You've come many times, I'm sure, but most of you haven't had real orgasms. Because men are taught that orgasms happen when you ejaculate, but they're not taught that you can teach yourself how to have orgasms, just like women also have to teach themselves how to have orgasms. Our society, because we shame and guilt so much about sexuality, we don't teach people that, again, it's not just a skill. You are evolution wise, you can figure out what goes in what hole, but it's not like you need to, like, you're not born knowing how to like rock climb, right? Like you got to go like read some stuff, you got to buy some equipment, you got to go get an educator. It's the same thing with sex and your relationships and communication.
Right.
So to think that we inherently have these skills that we don't, like, even in your vanilla relationships, that you and your partner don't need to go learn how to communicate better, I can tell you, you do. And even if you think you communicate good, which I think I do, I still need to work on it. I still suck at it often.
I think we all do always. Yeah. Wow. So I feel like I'm learning so much. So thank you for all of that. It's just necessary information. Something that I saw you talk about on one of your YouTube videos was about how violence to Black women and Black trans people is rooted and can be traced back to the church. And I just learned a few months ago, like literally, like there's racist shit written in the Bible. I wouldn't know because I didn't read the freaking Bible, you know. I tried. It was so misogynistic. I
It
couldn't.
is. It is.
Yeah, but I just want to know like a little bit more, to elaborate on that because I know that you
Yeah.
have a lot of strong thoughts towards, organized religion, as do I. So
Yeah.
that intrigues me.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned before, I grew up in a very religious home. I am now officially calling it the cult of evangelicalism. Um, because
Yes.
I do think there are different levels. I do know other friends that grew up in the church that didn't
Mhm.
have the same as intensive an experience I did. But to quickly give you a background, I grew up in a non-denominational church with very conservative Christian parents. I wasn't allowed to shave my legs or wear makeup until I was 13. I wasn't allowed to date till I was 16. I had to opt out of sex ed in my high school education to take a purity
Oh,
class by myself in the library.
no.
I led youth group. I led church rallies. I sat out front of like big arenas at 4 o'clock in the morning so I could make sure that I was at the front row at the, you know, youth group revival. I've been to creation. I've led people to Christ. I've spoken in tongues. I've been laid out. I've laid other people. I've done all the things deepest into the cult.
Wait, you spoke in tongues? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I've been prophesied over. Ironically enough, the prophecy that they gave me, I am actually completing now. I just don't think that they thought it would be against the church. This is ironic. But so just to give a very brief background, I am quite fluent in this. Let's see, the Left Behind books. If you grew up in the church, you will know what I'm talking about. I've seen the movies. It's you know, kind of a fictional story that was made about the apocalypse, which is end times and Revelations in the Bible.
Okay.
So this is something. Let's see. I moved out of the house right after 18, and I think it took about 6 years for me to like fully disengage from the church and be I think I identified as an atheist for a while. Now I'm more kind of like I'm a witch. Let's just be blunt. I pray to my African ancestors. I do rituals. I have an altar. So I went all the way the other direction. I'm not religious in like an organized religious way. They're just self practices at home, right? Which I think is healthy. I think there's a lot of good things about religion that can be healthy. I think what most people are looking for is community and connection. And I think there's just more productive ways we can do that. But going into the history of it,
yes.
I know that you had mentioned before, so I have a little video where I talked about this, but as I was getting more into activism work as a Black person, I was just like, I don't understand why we still worship white Jesus. Like, I don't understand why we still worship the master's religion or the master's God. I don't understand why like Black women in my life have come up to me to try to like get me into Bible study, or like, you know, my skirt's too short, so they need to save me for Jesus or whatever. And like if that happens to me in the future, I'm going to stop them and I'm going to shame them. I'm going to be like, nah, actually what you need to do is you need to go learn our ancestors' traditions. I'm mad that you haven't taught me how to fucking pray to the ancestors or how to do fucking the dances that we're supposed to do from our culture. I need you to not try to get me back into the slave religion. And I think that I think that, well, not think, I know that this connects because, you know, I started speaking more and doing more research on this when the Little Nas video came out a couple months ago. I've always thought this, theories have been going on in my head, but after that video came out and I actually watched some of the pushback, I mean, YouTube is only going to give me the liberal stuff that I watch, let's be honest, the woke stuff I watch. But for some reason, it randomly popped up a video from a Black pastor talking about the Lil Nas video. And so I listened to it for a little bit. It's good to know what your enemies are talking about. And I just was like, this is violent. There is no way that you cannot see the connection behind the church saying things like that, and trans people, and I mean, I identify as queer myself, are going to hell and are shameful. We can talk to the victims. Like, this isn't something we need to question. We can talk to thousands, possibly millions of people who know someone who is not alive right now because of the shame and guilt and shit that the church put on them. And I talk about the church as an institution, just I talk about racism as an institution. There are individually great people in the church, but the institution itself is flawed and harmful. Right. Like, not even harmful, it's violent. It's violent.
Absolutely.
And to not be able to connect the fact that you have the church saying that these people are heathens and they're going to hell, and like trans people are the devil or whatever else, to not be able to see how that connects to the justification that Black men put in their heads about the violence that is put on them. I mean, I don't see how you cannot make that connection. And then, I mean, we're talking about Black women. I mean, you mentioned the Bible is very misogynistic and very patriarchal.
Yes.
And Black women are always at the bottom of any of those systems.
Yeah,
right?
good point. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think that, you know, I think part of the problem is that Christianity is a belief system, is a faith-based religion. But unfortunately, a majority of the promoters and followers want to teach it as fact. You know, like there are creation museums. That's an oxymoron.
I understand. Because
museums are supposed to have historical, factual artifacts.
Yeah.
And there's no artifacts in these things. It's stuff that they created based on the Bible, which was not written when any of those people were alive. If you want to go into like the factual part of it, what I like to emphasize in America is the first Black people that were Christians that had a church were slaves. And the slave owner gave this church building to a Black slave that he trusted, to preach this. So they would have a controlled space to socialize, right? To have a little, you know, and also to keep them being slaves. Like it wasn't to teach you or to preach to, you know, like we already had our religions, number one, when we came to this country, or if we were already in this country. But it was used to keep you enslaved. They taught you that in God's eyes, we're all equal. Like in heaven, we're all equal. Not here on earth. No. Here on earth, you're a slave. But in heaven, God thinks that we're equals. And isn't that something to work for?
I don't understand why it can't be the same in both places then. Like that really bothers me about like people who are like, well, Jesus this and Jesus that. And it's like, well, Jesus wouldn't like how you treat people and how you're not loving your neighbor for who they are, and like that you judge people by how they're dressed and how they act. Like that's not what the real Jesus did. Like I don't understand this like twist in the story that everyone got. I'm baffled by that. And then they're like, oh, you're different here, but up there you're the same. Like why can't we make heaven on earth here? Like what?
Well, but that's the thing is that, you know, it's ingrained in you from childhood. So we're talking about people that are heavily brainwashed.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, and it took me 6 years and studious education of like lots of research and like, and also lots of pushback. You know, my mom, my adopted mom was beside herself when I was considering voting for Obama. And she was like, how could you do that? He's murdering babies, because abortion is the big issue, right?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm going to be honest though, like, I didn't tell her this, but like, I like gay people and I'm gay. Like, like it just, that was the big thing that really hindered me with the church, was I was like, but I want to lick vaginas and like, and I want to have friends that are gay. These people are awesome. I don't understand why we can't accept them. So that was kind of my, you know, first push off. And, you know, I was raised in very much purity culture. So I started doing some research about that, and like the whole just identity or just the idea and theory of virginity and purity was created in the church as a form of control. Like in Puritan times, like not Puritan, Victorian times is when a lot of oppression and repression of the church came. Like we look at the dresses and everything and like they're amazing and we want to wear them now, but they were up to their neck and down to their ankles for a reason. It wasn't just fashion. It was, if you show your ankle, you as the woman will be condemned for tempting the men. you know, a lot of the onus is put on the woman to protect
Absolutely. I
their,
don't understand that to this day. And I
yeah,
remember like hearing when ballet was starting to evolve and it was time for them to raise the skirts higher because for functionality purposes, and they rose the skirts above the ankles. There was like a whole coalition formed to
yes,
get them to lower their skirts back down.
yeah. We actually, if you go through some fashion, historical fashion history, you will see that the shorts started getting the skirts started getting a little shorter, like in the, I think it was like the 30s or 40s, and then Christianity, evangelical influence on politics and culture, put those skirt lengths right back down, like in the 50s. Now I may have
So
my decades a
odd.
little bit off, but
Sure.
it's the influence into everyday culture. I mean, we live in a like, if we want to, you know, get political about it, we live in a country that is supposed to be separation of church and state,
Oh,
and we'll
don't
say
even
that,
get
we'll
me
say we will
started.
separation of church and state, but it's in God we trust on the money. And, you know, we will have politicians come out and be like, this is a free country, freedom of religion. And then they'll be like, let's all bow our heads to Jesus, Lord Christ, Savior.
Or they'll say God bless America at the end of their shit. Or we have in
Yeah.
high school we had to pledge allegiance to fucking God every single day of our
Yeah.
lives. Like what is that?
Well, the thing is, what people don't realize, because they don't teach you, because the people who wrote the history books, to be honest, a lot of them are Christian conservative Texas women. There was a
100%.
coalition of Texas women that helped. That's one reason why a lot of your books are from Texas. So they took a lot of the shit out that don't make them look good. Like that they justified this for slavery, or that
Damn
the
it.
reason why you have private private schools, which are normally ran by churches, they fought like integration, like to the point where they're willing to lose their tax write-off status because they did not want to integrate. Homeschooling, a big part of homeschool culture, came from people of the church taking their kids out of their private school because the schools had to integrate with Black people. Like this is all rooted
That's
in
how
racism.
homeschooling started?
Not how homeschooling started, but how a big part of the culture
Right.
within Christianity and homeschooling. And again, they don't like, there's history to back this up. Like, in God we
Sure.
trust wasn't always on our money. You know what I'm saying? God wasn't always in our Pledge of
I
Allegiance.
didn't know that.
Like, this stuff happened in the 50s and 60s
Well, okay,
and
that
was
makes so much
organized.
sense. That makes so much sense because that's also when they added Christopher Columbus to the school books because they wanted a prominent, like, positive Catholic figure to be in our school books.
I
And
think
it was
Italian too. Was it Italian? No, what
he
was
was
he?
Spanish, I
Spanish.
think.
Yeah.
But it was all around that same time between 50s and
Yep.
60s. So it sounds like there was like a big push and a movement during that time and oh my God.
Yeah, it's a lot of people, and I feel like especially with the younger generations, if you were taught the correct history, if we weren't taught straight fucking lies and propaganda,
Right.
you would know this because it's interconnected with our history and politics. It's not like it's separate, they're interconnected, right? The reason
Right.
why Texas just banned abortions is because religious people think that banning abortions will make people not have sex. That's what they think. They don't they won't think past that because of their religion. They won't think, oh no, maybe we should recognize the fact that people fuck. None of your shit has worked. And they can't acknowledge that because then they would have to acknowledge their own impurities because none of them were fucking virgins when they got married either. Like, it's all a facade. It's
Yeah.
all a lie, right? Like, my own mother, like my entire life, preached this shit that implied she was a virgin when she got married. And I remember asking her straight out, and she's like, it's not appropriate. We'll talk about it when you're 18. And I genuinely think she thought I was going to forget. And I was like, bitch, that was the first thing I was doing when I turned 18.
Mark it on my calendar. Today I ask mom again.
Were you a virgin when you got married? And the thing is, I only asked even really just to annoy her at that point. Because if you were, you would have said, yes, I was a virgin. And the first time I saw a dick, it was your dad's. If you were, you would have just said that. If you would have, like, it's like my parents hid things from me and didn't educate me about things, thinking that would keep me from doing things. And that just keeps people, that only keeps people doing things unsafely, right? Just like I was mentioning
Right.
earlier with the neck rope. We're gonna do it, right? We're gonna do it. You might as well teach us how to do it safely. The
Right.
absolute just ignoring of intellectual information by the church is absolutely infuriating. I mean, I don't think people understand that there is a portion of students that are still taught creation as a solid truth, not evolution as an option. They are in Christian churches or Christian schools that teach this as a factual truth. And it's the idea that they want to erase anything in their history that shows they were not moral, because they always want to have this moral high ground, as well as the fact that they don't practice what they preach. How many pastors have come out with sex workers, with fucking gay, as pedophiles? Like
Oh,
Matt
yeah.
Gaetz is being fucking investigated for sex trafficking
Hilarious.
right now.
Yeah.
So your oppressive culture is not working. It is only harming people.
Definitely. And it gets worse and worse as time goes on and as more people are being on the planet and then the numbers of brainwashed people gets higher and higher. It creates a worse and more scary scenario for all of us. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Yeah, luckily, call it the information. I don't know exactly the pinpoint reason. I'm sure it's a mix of a lot of things, but we're slowly becoming less churched, I think, as these younger generations are coming up in a culture where they're allowed to figure out their sexual identity in high school. They're allowed to come out as gay in high school. Like, the amount of money and trauma we've spent with the last few generations hindering them from being able to come out with as these things till they're 25 or 28 or fucking 55.
Exactly,
Like,
even older.
that's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
And to not understand that that is harming our community, like that's harming your community you live in,
Absolutely.
is just insane. So I think part of that is helping, because they are seeing, oh, I don't want to be part of the church because I can't be gay, I want to have butt sex, like, and they're like, so the numbers are going down, but the influence that it has in our politics, right? Like, I have no problem with religion. Go do your religion. You don't get a tax write-off. Fuck you. Sorry. You shouldn't get a tax write-off. And two, like, you shouldn't be involved in our politics. I don't care. Like, you can't write
Exactly.
policy based on the Bible. Like, that's just crazy.
Exactly.
And that's literally what we're trying to do in Texas right now. Like,
I know.
Texas in the last 6 months
They're a mess.
It's a mess. It's a mess, but it's all rooted. It's all perpetuated. It's all justified by religion. This is God's work. God told me I needed to do this. Well, God didn't tell you shit. That was your own voice in your head.
Yeah. Wow. I could talk to you about this for hours.
Seriously. Yeah.
For hours and hours.
We could touch on.
Yeah. And I love how sometimes you're yelling, because I feel like that. No, because it's like me sometimes when I'm like have conversations like this with like family members or like my really close friends, and I'm like, because it's just like infuriating.
It's
I feel you. I feel
you.
you, I'm so grateful to like have like a deep like, and when you said like separation of church and state, like I saw a post recently by the Major Williams, who's running for governor of California and is running Republican, and he posted a picture of him like at church and was like on his like I'm running for governor page, and I was just like, wow, why? Like, stop. I don't want to know about your church shit.
The Democrats have to do it too. Like, that's the problem. It's not like it's just the Republicans. Like, not one president has gotten elected without having, like, let's be honest, you really think Obama is an evangelical Christian? That intellectual man? Really? Really? Or did he know the act that you need to play to get elected?
Exactly, because they all do this thing. This drives me nuts. They all do the religious dinner. I forget what they call it. It's like an event that they have every year, and every sitting president has ever done it, and it's a religious God dinner specific.
There was people that were excited and thought it was diversity because Biden's one of the few Catholic presidents. I was like, I'm sorry. Number one, Catholics don't even talk to me until you deal with your pedophilia. Fuck off as a religion. But two, like that doesn't make that. Has there been a Muslim president? Has there been a witch president? Has there been a Buddhist president? No. Different denominations of the same evangelical shit is not diversity.
But and if there was though, that would not be okay with like so many people.
They'd be brown.
Right.
Do you think if Obama had been any other religion, would he have gotten, like, if he had come out as an atheist, he would not have gotten elected?
No, absolutely not. You're right. Yeah, you're right. You have to present. Church. Yeah, you have to present as I'm a God-fearing person. You have to present that in order to get into. Yeah, exactly. Like, I hate to say this person's name on here, so I'm not gonna do that. But like the 45th, like that motherfucker did not believe in shit. Shit.
That was the most blatant, Trump exposed evangelicals for the truth, which is you don't give a fuck about what's actually in your Bible. You just have, it's really over abortion. They were willing to take everything Trump gave them. All of this, this heathen who really was, if there was an antichrist, it would have been him. They're willing to take all of that just so they could get this bill that the Supreme Court is going to see in the fall about abortion. What is your religion? What are you living for at this point? That's what you're willing to do over this. And last little point on this, I cannot emphasize this enough. The people who are making decisions about your vagina, young women, your uterus, it's not just men. It's a bunch of women that uteruses don't work no more. They don't have to worry about even having to make this decision. They've already had their abortions. They don't have to worry about it.
Oh, snap.
So let's be honest. The reason why they make these laws is because the rich people who make them, they're not worried about not getting their abortion when their daughter needs it. They're not worried about it. I also want to ask them what they're going to do when their daughter gets knocked up by a black guy if you ban abortion. Always, just rhetorical question. Just think about it. If people are listening, what do you do then?
Right.
Because
we'll see. Yeah.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally I could talk to you for hours, but we can't. We can do it again sometimes.
Yes. We can do it again sometimes. If you like my rants, I normally do this on my YouTube page and and my Instagram. A big part of activism is just educating, and the more that I learn, the more I'm like, oh, if we just let people know the truth, we will fix some of these problems.
Exactly.
I don't think a majority of people are evil, racist people. I think a majority of people are ignorant and have been lied to.
Exactly. Yes.
Want to be fabulous just like these strippers? Pay attention. It's Stripper Tips.
Be authentic. Be authentically you in whatever you're doing. Like if you are a cowgirl or you like cosplay or like that's who you are outside, do find that way that works within stripping, because the clients that are going to give you money are going to give you more money because you are going to be able to portray that more in a better way than any role that you try to pretend to be. And I tell that people with kink stuff and pro dom work as well. If you are not a screaming, yelling, mean dom, you're kind of a sweet mommy dom. Do that because the people who the clients you're going to get, that's what they want. And when you are authentic, you make more money. That's just the reality of the thing, because our life is starved for authenticity. Everything is so fake. We just went through a bunch of different topics that explain every level of our country where we are putting on facades for everyone is putting on a facade, right?
Exactly.
And so we are so starved for authenticity. And when do you want more authenticity than when you're doing your vulnerable, intimate, sexy things?
Awesome.
And sorry, let me add one more thing on that. For the people who pay for our work, We know you better than anyone. We are with you in your most intimate moments most of the time, whether we are actually there or you're watching us on screen. Our energy is connected with you. You can try to deny us rights. You can try to deny we don't exist and lie about you, but we there. We have imprinted on you. So embrace it, and you'll live with less shame and pain in your life.
Beautifully said.
Get ready for our rapid fire question round. It's time for 4 for 1.
Cool.
Would you rather have edible spaghetti hair that regrows every night or sweat maple syrup?
Sweat maple syrup.
I know, right? Because people could eat it off you. That makes so much sense. How long do you think you'd survive in a zombie apocalypse?
Oh, pretty long. I'd be organizing all the resources.
I could see that. What would you do if you could live forever?
Oh, be a vampire? I don't know. I've always wanted to be a vampire. I'm actually really mad that I'm 35 and not a vampire yet.
Not
That
yet.
like that. When people ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a vampire.
Amazing.
So if I could live forever, I would take the curse of having to suck people's blood. I would,
Wow.
because I like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, last one. What would you call a male ladybug?
A ladybug.
Classic.
Whatever the male ladybug wants to be called.
I love it. Oh my God, it's just so much fun. And you know what,
Yeah.
everyone out there in listening land, if you love this podcast as much as I do and you listen to it on the regs, we really would appreciate your tips because after all, we are sex workers over here and we love
Hello.
tips.
Monies.
So if you want to share your wealth, you can find us at paypal.me/yes a stripper podcast or go to yesastripperpodcast.com and click on the very fancy donate button and your money goes towards past, future guests and hosts, including new hosts coming up very soon. Can't wait to announce all of that juicy info.
Exciting.
Posh, can you please tell everyone how we can follow you and be obsessed with you?
Yes, you can check out my service offerings and you can see some of the rope performances and pictures I've done on my website at thempexperience.com. You can check out my YouTube channel. That is the MP for Madam Posh Experience on YouTube. I am on Instagram at posh.ropes, on Twitter at Madam Posh 2, and on Facebook at Mistress Posh. I know they're all different handles, but unfortunately when you do sex work, people like to delete your accounts. So it'd be nice to have one brand across them all, but you can also see them all posted on my YouTube and on my webpage.
Basically, you can go to platforms and search Madam
Yep.
Posh, right?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I
There
will
it
come up.
is.
Yeah, I will come up as well as a couple tea shops.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I've gotten tagged in a couple.
So the person, not the tea shop. Got it.
I so loved when that happened because I'm sure some very lovely ladies got a surprise when they tagged on my Instagram thinking I was a high tea shop.
That's hilarious.
I mean, we can do high tea, but I will probably have some submissives tied up as furniture.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much
Yes,
for
thank
spending so
you.
much time with us today. And thank you to everyone else for listening. New podcast comes out every Wednesday. This is your favorite podcast. Yes, a stripper podcast. Bye.
Happy kinking. Farewell.
Thanks for listening, everyone. This episode has been a production with Period Podcast Network. Find out more on Instagram at Period Podcast Network. Be sure to follow us on Instagram too at Yes, a Stripper Podcast, and you can find us on Twitter at Yes, a Stripper Pod. Please like, subscribe, and rate Yes, a Stripper Podcast here on YouTube.